1. We're checking out this fascinating 1965 Chevy El Camino, listed for $25,000 in Santa Ynez, California. This isn't your typical classic El Camino. It's been modernized with some serious upgrades that make it a really interesting blend of vintage style and modern performance. The heart of this beast is a 5.3 L Vortec V8 Gen 3 LS truck engine, paired with a 4L60E automatic transmission, a solid, reliable powertrain combo that gives this classic plenty of modern muscle. The owners made some thoughtful upgrades, including hooker headers, front disc brakes, and a unisteer power rack and pinion setup that really improves the driving experience. Inside, you've got some nice creature comforts: Escalade power seats, working AC, power windows, and modern digital gauges. The airlift rear springs are a nice touch for adjustable ride height and load handling. Let's be honest about the condition. There is some rust on the hood and bumpers, which is worth noting. However, the seller states the body and floorboards appear rust-free, which is crucial for these classics. The American Racing Salt Flat wheels look great on it, and the recent maintenance, new tires, battery, and alternator, shows it's been cared for. For $25K, you're getting a unique El Camino that combines classic looks with modern reliability and comfort. It's set up to be a solid daily driver or weekend cruiser, though you'll want to check out that rust situation in person. The seller seems pretty straightforward about the vehicle's condition and firm on the price, which I respect. 2. I have to be completely honest with you about this 1972 Chevy pickup listing at $25,000. I'm seeing some major red flags here that we need to discuss. First off, the seller's description is extremely sparse, which is concerning for a vehicle at this price point. All we know is that it runs, has an automatic transmission, is white, shows 300 miles, which likely means 300,000 or a reset odometer, and most importantly, has a salvage title. $25,000 for a salvage title, 72 Chevy pickup with minimal information, is frankly quite steep. While these classic Chevy trucks are increasingly valuable and sought after, the salvage title significantly impacts its value. Even if it's been properly repaired, buyers should be very cautious and need much more information about what caused the salvage title and what repairs were done. The seller only states it's in good condition and turns on. That's not nearly enough detail for a classic truck at this price point. You'd want to know about the engine condition, transmission health, rust situation, interior state, and the truck's overall history. For $25,000, you could find similar 72 Chevys with clean titles and much more detailed documentation. If you're interested in this one, you'd absolutely need a thorough in-person inspection and a lot more information about its history. Right now, based on the limited information and salvage title, this price seems significantly overvalued. 3. We're looking at a pretty interesting 1983 Ford F-150 XLT 4X4 listed for $6,000. Let me give you the honest scoop on this classic workhorse. First, the good stuff. This F-150 has surprisingly low mileage at just 61,000 original miles, which is pretty rare for these old Fords. It's packing the reliable 302 V8 engine that, according to the seller, still sounds great. Being a 4X4 XLT model, it's one of the nicer trim levels from that era. Now let's talk about the issues, because there are some. The transmission, while shifting well, has a fluid leak that'll need addressing. There's sheet metal rust in what the seller calls common areas, though thankfully the frame is rust-free, which is crucial. The truck needs new tires, has some hail damage, and there's a crack in the windshield that'll need replacing. The AC is present, which is nice for an 83, and most features work except for the cruise control. The black paint probably shows its age, especially with those hail dings mentioned. At $6,000, you're looking at a classic F-150 that needs some TLC but isn't a basket case. These 7th Gen F-150S are getting harder to find, especially with 4X4 and such low mileage. The price seems fair considering the mix of positives and negatives. You're getting a solid foundation that needs some work but isn't overwhelmingly problematic. 4. Let's talk about this 1974 Chevy C10 that's listed for $4,300. I've got to be straight with you. This is definitely a project truck, and the seller's being upfront about that. Under the hood, you've got the classic 350 V8 paired with a 350 automatic transmission, a combination that's both reliable and easy to work on. That's definitely a plus point, because parts are readily available, and there's tons of knowledge out there for these powertrains. Now let's address the elephant in the room. This truck hasn't been registered since 2021 and is actually 3 years behind on registration. While it's good news that it doesn't need smog in California, being pre-1976, you'll need to factor in those back registration fees into your total cost. The seller describes it as a running and driving project, which typically means it moves under its own power but needs work. With 100K on the odometer, that's not terrible mileage for a vehicle of this age, but remember, these old odometers often rolled over at 100K, so verify the actual mileage. At $4,300 OBO, or best offer, you're looking at an entry-level price point for a classic C10. But be realistic. You're buying a project that'll need time, money, and effort to get properly roadworthy. These trucks have great potential and a huge following, but make sure you inspect the frame, floor pans, and cab corners for rust before making an offer. 5. We're checking out this 1978 GMC Sierra K20 Camper Special listed at $7,000. And I've got to say, these heavy-duty classics are getting harder to find. What we've got here is a K20. That's the 3/4-ton 4x4 model in its Sierra Classic Camper Special trim, which means it was built to handle the extra weight of a slide-in camper. Under the hood, you'll find the trusty 350 V8 paired with the equally reliable TH 350 automatic transmission, a powertrain combo that's proven itself over decades of service. The odometer shows 172,000 miles, but the seller mentions it's rolled over, so we're likely looking at 272,000 plus miles. That's not necessarily a deal breaker for these trucks. These powertrains were built to last, and many are still running strong with similar mileage. The truck wears a green paint job and has current registration through August, which is always a plus. Being a 78, it's old enough to dodge most emissions requirements in many states. At $7,000, you're in the ballpark for these trucks, especially considering it's a Camper Special 4x4 model. However, the high mileage should be factored into any negotiations. These K20s are workhorses built for heavy-duty use, and they've got a strong following in the classic truck community. Before pulling the trigger, you'd want to check the usual suspects: frame rust, transmission condition, and 4x4 system functionality. The seller's description is pretty bare bones, so a thorough in-person inspection would be crucial. 6. Let's talk about this 1985 Chevy C10 that's listed for $12,000. I need to be upfront with you about several aspects of this truck. First off, we're looking at a restored salvage title vehicle, which immediately should make you pause at the $12K asking price. The seller's rating it as fair condition, which is at least honest. Under the hood, there's a 350 V8 that's been modified with a cam and a rebuilt Holley 4-barrel carb, paired with the reliable TH 350 automatic transmission. The truck's got some recent work done: new battery, starter, fuel pump, and head gasket, which shows someone's been maintaining it. The odometer shows 32,897 miles, but on an 85, that's likely rolled over at least once. The aesthetics seem to be a focus here, with a red and black two-tone exterior and matching custom interior with chrome accents. Being a short bed, these are typically more desirable for enthusiasts. Now let's be real about the price. $12,000 for a fair condition. C10 with a rebuilt salvage title is pretty steep, even in today's market. While the modifications and custom work add some value, the title status significantly impacts its worth and future resale value. You'd typically expect to see these trucks with rebuilt titles priced several $1,000s less. 7. We're looking at something really special. A 1961 Chevy C10 that's listed at $28,000. And let me tell you, this isn't your average classic pickup. This is a frame-off restoration, which means everything was taken apart and rebuilt from the ground up. The heart of this beast is a 383-stroker crate engine, a serious performance upgrade from the original power plant. For those who might not know, a 383-stroker is basically a 350 block that's been built out to 383 cubic inches, offering significantly more power and torque. The seller's being pretty confident about the quality, and based on the description, this truck seems to be done right. We're talking about a no-rust, no-bondo build, where they apparently didn't cut corners on the restoration. The interior is described as perfect, and the whole truck only has a few minor imperfections. With 43,000 miles showing, that's likely post-restoration mileage, but you'd want to verify that. The orange paint job makes it stand out, and being a 61, you're getting those desirable early C10 body lines that collectors love. At $28,000, you're in the upper range for these trucks, but considering it's a frame-off restoration with a performance engine build, the price isn't unreasonable in today's market. These early C10s are highly sought after, and when they're properly restored with performance upgrades, they command premium prices. 8. Let's talk about this 1966 Chevy C10 that's listed for $12,000. This one's got an interesting mix of good points and honest issues that we need to discuss. Under the hood, we've got a built 350 V8 with some serious performance upgrades. A Holley 4-barrel carb, Mallory ignition, larger cam, blackjack headers, and Flowmaster dual exhaust. That's a solid combination that should make this truck sound and run great, just as the seller claims. The 3-speed automatic with a shift kit adds to the performance angle. The cooling system's been upgraded with an aluminum radiator, and there are new springs all around. The custom bed with built-in storage for the jack and tools is a nice touch, and those wheel tubs with drag slicks suggest this truck means business. Now let's be honest about the issues. There's rust in several areas that needs addressing. The seller's upfront about rust in the passenger floorboard and above the windshield on the upper right front, plus mentions etc., which suggests there might be more spots. These are structural areas that shouldn't be ignored. At $12,000, you're looking at a driver-quality C10 with some nice performance upgrades, but also some rust issues that'll need attention. The 60,000 miles showing could be original or since rebuilding. You'd want to verify that. For someone looking for a fun, performance-oriented classic truck that they can drive while gradually addressing the rust issues, this could be a good option. Just make sure to thoroughly inspect all those rust spots and factor repair costs into your budget. 9. Let's check out this 1981 Chevy pickup listed at $17,500. Now this is one of those clean square-body Chevys that's been set up with some nice performance touches while keeping that classic look. Under the hood, you've got the reliable 350 V8 that's been upgraded with headers and a 500 CFM Holley carburetor sitting on a high-rise manifold, a combination that should give this truck some nice extra punch. The dual exhaust setup probably makes it sound pretty sweet too. Some practical features worth noting. It's got dual gas tanks, a really useful feature for these old trucks, and a Rhino bed liner that'll protect the bed from damage. The truck rolls on old-school steel wheels with new tires, keeping that period-correct look while providing fresh rubber where it counts. The odometer shows 75,000 miles, and the seller rates it in excellent condition. The white paint appears clean in the listing, which is always a good sign for these older trucks. Having a clean title is another plus. Now, about that $17,500 asking price. It's on the higher end for an 81, but clean square-body Chevys have been climbing in value. The modifications are tasteful and practical rather than over the top, which helps maintain its value. 10. Let's dive into this 1972 Chevy Super Cheyenne that's listed for $15,000. This is a pretty special find because the Super Cheyenne was the top-of-the-line model for '72, and this one's got some interesting history. Let's start with the good stuff. The truck's powered by a rebuilt 350 V8 with a 4-bolt main and 4-barrel carb, with less than 1,000 miles on the rebuild. It's got the premium Super package, which includes factory AC, though it needs a new compressor, factory tack, tilt steering, and heavy-duty suspension. All the fancy stuff for '72. The interior appears to be well preserved with the original blue cloth and vinyl bench seat showing no tears, and the original headliners still intact. The truck's wearing its original blue and white paint scheme, and it's sitting on some period-style aluminum trick wheels with brand new BF Goodrich raised white letter tires. Now let's be honest about what it needs. There's some rust repair needed near the lower body areas, though the seller notes the cab corners and frame are solid. The windshield needs replacement due to a rock chip, and that AC compressor issue needs addressing. The wood bed is described as in fairly good condition, which usually means it could use some attention. At $15,000, considering current market values for Super Cheyennes and the overall condition, it's priced reasonably, especially with the recent engine rebuild. The seller's right about values on these climbing, but you'll need to budget for those repairs to maximize its potential. 11. Let's talk about this 1976 El Camino that's listed for $9,900. I've got to be straight with you about several aspects of this classic car truck. First, let's address the elephant in the room. This vehicle has a rebuilt title, which is something that needs careful consideration at this price point. The dealer's description is pretty sparse on mechanical details, notably omitting any specifics about the engine, which is a bit concerning. The good news is that the interior is described as being in great shape with no rips or tears in the maroon upholstery, and it's running its factory wheels. With 124,725 miles showing, that's reasonable mileage for a vehicle of this age. The seller claims it runs and drives well, including highway driving, and mentions it's all original parts. However, being a dealer listing with minimal details, you definitely want to verify the mechanical condition and what led to the rebuilt title. At $9,900, considering the rebuilt title status, you're in the higher range for a 76 El Camino with documentation issues. While these vehicles are indeed becoming more collectible, this price would be more appropriate for one with a clean title. What do you think about this El Camino, folks? While it looks presentable, that rebuilt title and limited information should make you proceed with caution at this price point. 12. Let's talk about this 1966 Chevy C20, listed at $8,900. And I need to be pretty straightforward about what we're looking at here. This is clearly described as a running project, which tells us right away that while it moves under its own power, it's not a finished truck. The listing is pretty sparse on details, which is always a bit concerning at this price point. What we do know, it's powered by a 350 V8 paired with an automatic transmission, and it's got some nice upgrades like power steering, power brakes, and dual exhaust. The seller mentions it has newer paint, which is a plus, but remember, fresh paint can sometimes hide underlying issues. Now for the red flags. It's currently on non-op status, meaning it's not currently registered for road use. There's also a lien on the title, which complicates the purchase process, and means you'll need to deal with the lien holder to get clean title transfer. At $8,900, you're in a tricky spot here. While C20S, the 3/4 ton version, from '66 are desirable trucks, this price seems steep for a project truck with a lien and limited information. The power steering and brakes are nice features, but there's just too much we don't know about its condition. 13. We're looking at something pretty special. A 1983 Ford F250 listed at $17,000 that's got a fascinating history and some rare features that make it stand out. Let's start with what makes this truck unique. It's a one-owner vehicle for 40 years, and it comes with the desirable Explorer trim package. Under the hood, you've got the massive 7.5-liter V8, that's 460 cubic inches for the old-school folks, paired with a 4-speed manual transmission. A pretty rare combination these days. Factory rated at 225 horsepower and 380 lb-ft of torque, these engines are known for their durability and torque. The truck's history is well documented with handwritten maintenance records from 1985 to 2013, which is incredibly rare for a vehicle this age. The odometer shows 24K miles but has rolled over, actual mileage around 124K, which is still reasonable for these trucks. Recent work includes new front brakes and calipers and a fresh spray-in bedliner. The body is described as rust-free, though there is some surface rust on the undercarriage, which is normal for the age. The red paint with white Explorer graphics looks period correct, and it's got some nice features like the sliding rear window and original 8-track player. At $17,000, you're paying for originality and documentation more than anything else. These F250S are getting harder to find in this condition, especially with such extensive service history and the rare manual transmission. 14. Let's talk about this 1985 GMC Sierra listed at $11,900. And I've got to say, this one's pretty interesting because it's what we call a survivor, meaning it's largely original and unmodified. What makes this truck special is its originality. We're looking at the original paint and interior, with just 73,930 actual miles. That's incredibly low mileage for a nearly 40-year-old work truck. It's powered by the reliable 305 small block V8, paired with the desirable 700 R4 overdrive automatic transmission, a combo known for decent power and highway-friendly fuel economy. The truck comes with power steering, power brakes, and importantly, working cold AC. The locking camper shell is a nice bonus for security and weather protection. Having the original owner's manual and dealership paperwork adds value for collectors. At $11,900, you're paying for exceptional originality and documented low mileage. While that might seem high to some, finding these trucks in such original condition with this level of recent maintenance is getting increasingly rare. 15. Let's talk about this 1960 Chevy C20 listed at $4,000. And I've got to be completely honest about what we're looking at here. First, let's acknowledge what's missing. There's no back window and no bench seat. These are significant items that you'll need to source and factor into your budget. Finding correct parts for a 60 C20 isn't always easy or cheap. The good news is that it's powered by the 283 V8 paired with a 4-speed manual transmission, a robust and well-respected powertrain combo from this era. Being a C20, it's the 3/4-ton model, which means heavier duty components throughout. The seller claims it's a one-owner California truck with a clean title, which could mean less rust than trucks from other regions. At 90,000 miles, that's not terrible for a truck of this age, though these old odometers often rolled over at 100K. Now let's talk value. At $4,000, you're looking at a project price for a classic truck. While these early C20S are desirable and climbing in value, the missing components make this one a project rather than a ready-to-drive classic. What do you think about this old workhorse, folks? At $4,000, it could be a decent starting point for someone willing to hunt down those missing pieces and put in some work. 16. Let's check out this 1972 Chevy C20 Custom Deluxe that's listed for $13,900. And there's something pretty special about this one. The highlight of this truck is what's under the hood. We're talking about the mighty 402 big block V8, which is essentially Chevy's 396 that actually displaces 402 cubic inches. These engines are known for their serious torque and reliability. What makes this combo even more interesting is that it's paired with a 5-speed manual transmission, which is likely an upgraded unit since these typically came with 4 speeds from the factory. Being a C20, this is the 3/4-ton model, built tougher than its C10 sibling. The Custom Deluxe trim was a nice upgrade package for these trucks, offering better interior appointments and extra trim pieces. The seller notes very minimal rust, which is always something to verify on these old trucks, but it's encouraging to hear. At 98,000 miles, that's reasonable for a truck of this age, especially considering its heavy-duty nature. At $13,900, you're paying for that desirable big block 5-speed combo, and what appears to be a well-preserved example. The seller describes it as a real nice driver, suggesting it's ready to hit the road rather than needing immediate work. What do you think about this big block C20, folks? That powertrain combination makes this one stand out from the crowd. 17. Let's talk about this 1972 El Camino listed at $15,000. And there are some interesting aspects to discuss about this classic car-truck hybrid. The seller's presenting a largely original vehicle with some period-correct modifications. Under the hood, you've got the original 350 V8 and automatic transmission. Both claim to be running great even with 136,000 miles. That's a reliable powertrain combo that's easy to maintain and find parts for. Some cool features here: it's got factory AC, a desirable option, and those Craigslist wheels from the 70s add some period-correct style. The Bose stereo system, while not original, is described as being from early days, suggesting it's a period upgrade. What's particularly interesting is that this El Camino has reportedly been taken down to bare metal and repainted in its original brown color. That's a proper paint job that shows commitment to preservation. The vinyl roof is claimed to be original with no tears, which is impressive for its age, as these often deteriorate. The interior is described as all original, which, if true, is remarkable for a 50-year-old vehicle with this mileage. At $15,000, you're in the middle range for 72 El Caminos. The price seems fair considering the proper paint job, factory AC, original drivetrain, well-preserved vinyl roof. Period-correct modifications. 18. Let's check out this 1979 El Camino listed at $9,000. And I've got to say, this one presents as a nice blend of original and tastefully upgraded features. Under the hood, you've got a 350 V8 that's been modified for additional horsepower, backed by an automatic transmission. The dual exhaust is described as having a subtle, tasteful tone, not one of those obnoxiously loud setups. Those rally wheels wrapped in TA radials are exactly what you'd want on these late 70s El Caminos. It's the perfect period-correct look. The interior appears well preserved with good seats and carpet. And importantly, the headliner is intact, a common failure point on these cars. Nice upgrades include a tilt steering wheel and an updated stereo system. The odometer shows 56,991 miles, but the seller's honest about not being able to verify if these are original miles. What's impressive is that they've had it on a lift to inspect the suspension, steering, and brakes, showing attention to the mechanical condition. The only notable missing piece is the front fender wheel lip trim, which the seller is actively trying to source. Finding correct trim pieces for these can be challenging, but they're out there. At $9,000, considering the condition and upgrades, you're in the right ballpark. This appears to be a solid driver that could either remain a nice cruiser or be built into something more aggressive. 19. Let's talk about something pretty special. A one-owner 1970 Chevy 4X4 listed at $15,000, and this one's got a story worth telling. What makes this truck particularly interesting is its history. It's been with the same owner since new, and it was special ordered with some desirable options that weren't common in 1970. An automatic transmission, front disc brakes, power steering, and power brakes. That combination of options makes this truck much more user-friendly than most of its peers from that era. The truck's had one repaint in red, but what's really impressive is the original interior condition. Finding a 53-year-old truck with no cracks in the dash is pretty rare. These old Chevy dashes were notorious for cracking, especially in sunny climates. The 89,000 miles showing likely represents actual mileage given the one-owner history. Being a 1970 model, this would have come with a V8 engine, likely either a 307 or 350, though the seller doesn't specify which one. The 4X4 system on these trucks is robust and relatively simple, which means they're generally reliable and easy to maintain. At $15,000, considering it's a documented one-owner truck with desirable factory options and what appears to be careful preservation, the price seems fair in today's market. These early 70s 4x4S are increasingly sought after, especially with documented history. 20. Let's dive into this 1983 GMC that's listed for $25,000, and this is definitely not your average square-body truck. The highlight here is what's under the hood. A 383-stroker motor, which is essentially a 350 block that's been built out to 383 cubic inches for significantly more power. It's paired with a 350 automatic transmission and a stout 12-bolt rear end, which is one of the strongest rear ends GM ever put in their trucks. This is a wide-body, short-bed configuration, which is a desirable combination for both looks and performance. The truck's got some serious performance upgrades, including electric cutouts, which let you switch between normal exhaust and straight pipes, and a Sun Pro tack to keep an eye on the revs. The exterior features an eye-catching orange paint job with black stripes, and the seller notes both the interior and stereo system are great. With 85,134 miles showing, that's reasonable mileage for a truck of this age, especially if it's been well maintained. At $25,000, you're definitely in the upper range for these trucks, but you're paying for the 383-stroker engine build, the desirable short bed configuration, the performance upgrades, the custom paintwork, the overall condition,